And we have a couple more people coming in. All right, well, welcome everybody to IMSA's FAFSA line-by-line webinar. This is something that I believe has been done annually for several years, and it's a way that parents can know how to fill out these forms and learn how to do that in a way that's efficient and gets the job done. So I'll just introduce myself first. I'm Wendy Bigler. I am the newest college and academic counselor as part of the team here at IMSA. I know that I have spoken to a couple of your children today, actually, as I see the names come in. So I'm happy to see that connection, and certainly happy to see this feedback. This has been an amazing couple of months for me, meeting students and working in the several different roles, but primarily as college counseling for right now. And it's just, I have been blown away by definitely the brains of your students, but oh my gosh, they're good souls. I have not been ever in all my teaching career with a student body that is quite so empathetic and understanding and alive and engaged. It's a real thrill. I could go on, but I'm going to stop and pass it on to Abel Montoya, who is going to lead this webinar. He is the Director of Outreach Operations at the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. So welcome, Abel.
Thank you very much, Wendy. It's good to be here with all you folks once again. IMSA asked me to come in and, well, virtually, obviously, to come and present on completing the FAFSA line by line. But before I get into that, let me just make sure I can share my screen. So bear with me because I need to do a little bit of a setup here. Okay. Just gotta fix this a little bit. Okay, very good. So the FAFSA line by line, it can be a little bit of a complicated process for some families. So we're going to go through each section. But before I do that, let me just tell a little bit about our agency. As a state agency, we help kids go to college. That's the shorthand version of what we do. Whatever that plan may be, we go out and work with students in the community and their families to assist them with the process, everything from applying to college, but more importantly, the financial aid aspect. How to apply for financial aid to make college more affordable, whether it's through the FAFSA, whether it's through the alternative application, whether it's through scholarships or what have you. And we try to assist them where the need is. And we do, as a state agency, everything we do is free. We don't charge individuals because we feel that this benefits the state in the long run. So today we're going to talk about the free application of federal student aid, each question by question. Before we do that, though, I want to lay the groundwork as to what this form is. This, for those of you who have your very first child going to college, or maybe a while, it's been some time since you've had a child in college, this may be a refresher. But the basis of the application itself, this is the application the federal government uses to try to ascertain what is the student eligible to receive, okay, from the federal government. This is why it's called the free application with federal student aid. Okay, so this is a federal form. In many states, like in Illinois, we use this same form to determine eligibility for state aid. And many colleges will also use the same form to consider students for institutional aid. There are some colleges that have an additional form, typically selective private institutions like a Northwestern, the University of Chicago, or Notre Dame. They may have used what's called the CSS profile. That's only for institutional aid. This form, the FAFSA, will consider students for federal aid and in Illinois for state aid. Okay, institutional aid for most colleges will also use the FAFSA, but some they may have the CSS profile. This form is free. Okay, Doesn't cost anybody anything to fill it out. You will be considered, you being the student, for the state grant, which is the Monitor Award Program. And then the schools will use this to award financially, basically trying to figure out what can the family afford. To that end, the form is kind of like a snapshot as of today, or basically the day you fill out the form, of the money coming into the household and the money leaving the household. Okay, so it's going to ask a lot of questions about income and about assets to try to determine what is the ability of the family to pay for college. Say college costs this much and the family can only afford this much. That gap between what it costs and what a family can afford is what financial aid is trying to fill. And the FAFSA is trying to determine, well, what is that level that they can afford? Okay. So with that being said, they look at income, right? That's the biggest driver of information that's needed for the FAFSA to determine need. The student needs to have their social security number. If a parent does not have a social security number, they would enter our zeros. It's all based on student eligibility. Okay, the status of the parents don't matter. It's all about the students. So the students, when they enter the social security number, that's the thing that's the most difficult to correct. So make sure it's correct. So they're going to ask lots of questions about income. They're going to ask questions about assets. But once again, income is the biggest driver. Okay, and we'll talk about what assets are reported, which ones may not be reported, and so forth. A driver's license number is needed of the students, but it's technically optional, because this will determine, this will help with residency requirement if the student decides to stay in state and is eligible for the MAP grant. Okay, and then the list of colleges, because this form, once it's submitted, it's a confidential form. It's submitted, it's sent to the federal government, and then the federal government sends a summary to the student called the student aid report. And they also send that information in a slightly different format to the colleges that the student lists on the form. Only those colleges that are listed will receive this information. The colleges will not know the order in which they're listed. All they will know is that they were one of the colleges listed. Simple as that. Okay. It's not shared with anyone else, with the exception being the state of Illinois, so we can consider them first for the state grant. Okay. Many of you hopefully already have what's called an FSA-ID. An FSA-ID is your electronic signature. When the form is submitted, they need a signature from the student and a signature from one of the parents. Okay, just one. And with the signature, it's electronic in the sense that you have a username, a password. And then if you're a parent and you have multiple kids attending college, you use the same FSA-ID to sign each of the FAFSAs. Okay. And then for parents, you must have a social security number to get an FSA-ID. If you're not able to obtain an FSA-ID, you actually have to print out a signature page and mail that in. But the vast majority of people will have an FSA-ID. And this FSA-ID is also used for the IRS data retrieval tool. And we'll talk about that when we get to that section of the FAFSA itself. Okay, so where do you start? Okay, well, you go to FAFSA.gov. Okay, www.fafsa.gov. You get to that screen that looks like what you see right here on the right-hand side of your screen. You click on Start Here, okay, for the new students. You fill out the form every year, okay? Once you do the form and submit it once, the second time, for the following week, you can just click to log in, all right? When you do the form again, you renew it, and a lot of the demographic information that you previously entered into the FAFSA gets transferred over to the new FAFSA. So the first time you do it is going to take you the longest, okay? The subsequent times is going to be faster. And back to the FSA-ID, you can create that at any time, okay? There's no specific time frame for the FSA-ID. For the FAFSA itself, you complete it on beginning October 1st each year. So right now, the FAFSA for the 23-24 year started October 1st, and you always fill it out for the year in which you would be in college, or the student will be in college. Once you start, you get to this welcome to the FAFSA form, tell us about yourself, and the student will log in using their FSA ID. Okay, and when they do that, a lot of the stuff that they entered in the FSA ID will populate the FAFSA itself. If they haven't created an FSA ID just yet, they click on that link that says create an FSA ID. If a family or say a student's having issues with the FSA ID for whatever reason, you can always use the personal identifiers, okay? Name, date of birth, social security number to start the form itself, okay? Just make sure that social security number is correct. And make sure that the name that's applied on the FAFSA matches the name on the social security card. When the FAFSA is submitted, they do a lot of data matching. So with Social Security Administration, they look to see that the name and date of birth and the social security number match what the social security administration has. Okay. Now, as a parent, if you're one of those parents that says, no, I don't want my kid knowing how much money I have or why not? Well, you may want to say, I'm a parent filling out the FAFSA form for my student. Okay. You just need to have all their information. But that may be a separate conversation. Um, when the parent enters the information, they got to make sure everything's entered properly. And when a parent starts an FAFSA for the student, sometimes they kind of gloss over certain things. And in this case, for example, it says enter the student's personal identifiers. If the parent starts the FAFSA and starts entering their information, that means the parent is applying for financial aid. Okay, so always be cognizant of whose information is being asked. Okay, once you get through that first part, you're going to get a statement saying, you're accessing a federal site. This is information. Do you agree to all the terms? You say accept, so you can move on. You select the year for which you're going to be applying. Currently, you see 2 years, the 22-23 year and the 23-24 year. Okay, because in the 22-23 years, you always have some students, like non-traditional students, who are applying late, or someone decides they're going to start college this spring 2023, so they're going to do the 22-23. But if a student is graduating in the spring of 2023 and they're going to start college in the fall of 2023, they're going to do the 23-24 FAFSA, always the year for which the student will be in college. The next question is going to ask about a save ID. This is like a 4-digit code that you use to get to the same iteration of the FAFSA. So you start it and stop it, because you don't have to complete it in one sitting. It's ideal that you do, but if you don't, this save key will help you get back to that same iteration of the FAFSA that was started. So you don't have to start it all over. There's going to be a number of FAQs throughout the form itself. So you can, get your questions answered. And most of the questions, there'll be a little question mark to the right of the question. You click on that and a pop-up box comes up with more information that's relevant to that specific question. You always use the continue or previous button at the bottom of the screen. I have it circled for you right here. If you use the browser arrows on the top of your browser, you're probably going to get kicked out of the FAFSA form. So always use continue and previous to move forward, right? You start off with the student demographics, okay? And when he says, when it says you, it's always referring to you, the student, okay? And they try to point out whose information is being requested. When you start the FAFSA using the FSA ID, a lot of the information gets pre-populated for you. Like in this case, this is a sample test FAFSA. You can see the name, the social security number, date of birth has been populated, okay? If the last name, if you have one of those very long last names or a hyphenated last name, enter it as exactly as it is on the social security card. If you run out of space, that's perfectly fine. Do not abbreviate, do not truncate. If you have a hyphen, make sure you include the hyphen. Just like it appears on social security card, even if you run out of space, enter as much as you can before moving on, okay? Make sure the date of birth is correct. Just make sure the data is being entered correctly. For the email address that's being requested of the student, make sure it's an email that does not expire. That's why I tell families, don't use your school email address, okay? Because for many schools, when you graduate from high school, you stop having access to that email. And oftentimes the schools will communicate with the student via that email, or the student can use that email to reset their password if they forget their password to the FSA ID. So it's important that they have an email address that they can access. And it's also, I'm preaching to the choir, right? Make sure it's appropriate, because colleges will see this. So just be aware of that. The address that people provide, this is the student, this is their permanent address, not where they're going to be in college, but this is a permanent address where they live. And this also helps determine eligibility for the state grant. If a student has DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, they should not fill out the FAFSA. They should fill out what's called the Alternative Application for Illinois Financial Aid, okay? The FAFSA itself is for students who are U.S. citizens, who are born here, who are U.S. permanent residents or who have very specific visa types, like a T visa, or have asylum granted, or who are refugees. There's very specific non-citizen types. If you don't fall into any of them, you should fill out the alternative application for Illinois financial aid. The FAFSA is only for students who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. The question says, have you lived in Illinois for at least 5 years? Remember, this is a federal form. The 5-year mark doesn't mean anything in Illinois. For us in Illinois, to get the state the MAP grant, as long as the parent resides in Illinois, the day they reside in Illinois is the day the student becomes eligible for the state grant. Okay, it's a little bit different if the student is independent. Okay, so for the question about citizen, that's asking of the student, are you a U.S. citizen? No, but I'm eligible. Non-citizen would be like those students who are U.S. permanent residents. The third one, no, I am not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. Those would be for students who are not eligible for federal aid. And this is where they stop and they should fill out alternative application and don't do the FAFSA. Okay. For the high school completion status, when it talks about when you begin in 20 and on this case, oops, I forgot to change the screenshot. You say for the 23-24 year, it should be a high school diploma. You know, the college degree certificate we're working on in the 23-24 year should be first bachelor's degree. Okay. And the reason that's important is because students are only eligible for the MAP grant and for the Pell Grant if they're applying for their first bachelor's degree, okay, or associate's degree. If they're applying for second bachelor's degree, they're not eligible for the Pell Grant. Will you have a bachelor's degree before you begin college in the 23-24 year? The answer is no. Okay. You won't have a bachelor's degree. What will your grade level be when you begin the 23-24 year? Never attended college be your first year. And some people say, well, I'm concurrently enrolled, like a dual enrollment, but you're not officially a degree seeking student at that institution. So the answer is going to be never attended college first year. The question about work study. This is a specific type of job on campus, okay? And only students who have the work study designation can apply for that position, or those positions, I should say. If you say no or don't know to the question about are you interested in work study, you're not going to be offered work study, or the student will not be offered. If you say yes, they could potentially be offered work study. Doesn't mean they have to get a job. It means they are eligible to get a job, a specific work study job. They still have to go out and apply for it. And the reason why it's considered financial aid is because for work study positions, 3/4 of the salary is typically paid through U.S. Department of Education funds, and 1/4 is paid through university funds. So it's cheaper for universities to hire work study students. So that's why some departments will say we're hiring work study students. And if you didn't get the designation of work study in your financial aid offer from the college, you cannot apply for that position. Okay, so I tell people just say yes. Okay. The student's driver's license number, like I said, it's optional, but if they enter it, it helps establish residency for Illinois. There's a question about foster care. It says, are you a foster youth? This is you being a student, or were you in foster care system? If you say yes, this will be a flag for the college to make sure they provide additional resources for the student, because there's some additional resources through DCFS and other programs specifically for youth in care or people who've been in foster care. Okay. If you say no, then they go to the next question about the high school completion status of parent one and parent two, if there are two parents in the form. This is colleges use this to oftentimes to consider students for programs aimed at first generation college students. Okay, so if student says that the parents have not received a bachelor's degree, they may be considered first generation college students, but it's optional. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to. All right, the student will need to add their high school. All right, they can search for it by entering the state, entering the city, and I entered Illinois and Aurora. I hit search, and it brings me all the high schools in the state of Illinois that reside in Aurora. And then you can scroll down, get to your school, click on INSA, and then it takes you to the next screen, which then asks you to list up to 10 colleges. Okay, and you can look at the colleges a couple of different ways. You can search by the college through the state and either the city or the school name, okay? Or if you have the school code, you notice right next in that middle section on the right-hand side, it says search by federal school code. If you have the school code, you enter the school code and it brings up that specific college. Otherwise, for example, I typed in Illinois here and it gives me a whole bunch of colleges in the state of Illinois. You can see there's 19 that have the word Illinois in their name. All right. So you click on the college that you select the college that you're interested in receiving your information. And then you're going to get the option of like you're going to be asked to select the housing plan. You live on campus. Does the student plan to live on campus with a parent or off campus? This question is asked for purposes of determining packaging. Does the college need to incorporate residence hall packages? Okay. I will get to the question about whose parental information to report when we get to the parent section. And then you can click on add more schools. Okay. Like I said, you can add up to 10 colleges. Now, there's some students who say, Ava, I got 12 colleges I want to apply to. What do? You can only list 10. You submit the FAFSA, get it processed. Typically, it takes about 2 to 3 business days to get it processed if you do everything electronically. Once it's processed, say you had 12 colleges, you go back into the FAFSA, take college 9 and 10 out and enter 11 and 12, re-sign it, resubmit it. So now all 12 colleges have your information. Okay. Now, keep in mind that if you make any subsequent edits to the FAFSA for whatever reason, the colleges that you took out will not have access to those new edits, that updated information. So just kind of be aware of that. Down the road, they've been talking about enabling students to select more than 10 colleges, but for the time being, it's just 10 colleges and that's it. If you make a mistake about one of the colleges or you want to take one out, you just click on the remove button, which is right to the right-hand side of the college itself. Now, it's going to ask for the student marital status, all right? And sometimes if parents are doing it, they're like, oh, married. They're like, oh, hold on a second. It's the student, okay? There's no age limit to who can fill out the FAFSA. So we have older students who may be married, who may put married, separated, or divorced. This is at the time the student's submitting the FAFSA itself, okay? Every once in a while, we get students like, I'm engaged, I'm going to get married next week. Well, for now, you're going to put single, okay? If you really want to put married, wait until you get married, then fill out the FAFSA, okay? So you're going to put select single, and then they're going to ask some additional questions, okay? They're going to ask, do you have the student, any dependent children, that you will support, okay? Do you have other dependents that you support? These are the dependency questions, okay? If a student cannot say yes to any of these questions, and there's about 13 of them, they will have to report parental information. Okay, it's not that the filing status of the parents does not affect if a student is dependent or independent versus the FAFSA. For a student to be independent, which means they do not report parental information, the student has to be married, over 24, have dependents, has been a ward of the court, is an emancipated minor, is unaccompanied and homeless, or unaccompanied and at the risk of being homeless. Very, very specific situations, okay? So you go through these, they have to be either a veteran or in graduate school to also be considered independent. If you can't say yes to any of these questions, they will be considered dependent students and parental information will be required. If you say yes to the question of, for example, does someone other than your parents have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? If you say yes to that question, the college will probably ask you for a copy of that court decision because they want to make sure that you didn't check that box by accident, okay? Same thing with emancipated minor. If you say you're emancipated minor, they're going to ask for documentation to corroborate that, okay? If none of these apply to you, the student says none of the above. And then there's questions about homelessness. And then once again, if they're not homeless or the risk of being homeless and unaccompanied, which means not in the presence of a parent, once again, they would have to provide parental information. But if the student is not in the presence of a parent and homeless or unaccompanied, and at the risk of being homeless, the college will ask for a third party to attest to that through either some type of a documentation, okay? Now, if the student can't say yes to any of those questions, they'll get the screen that says, based on your answers to the dependency status questions, you are considered a dependent student. This means you must provide parental information, okay? If the student does not provide parental information and the FAFSA says you're supposed to, then the student is only going to be considered for unsubsidized direct loans. That's it, nothing else. Okay. If there's some reason as to why a student can't provide the parental information, they would say, I am unable to provide information about my parents. And then they got to talk to the college to explain their situation. Now, what are some of the acceptable reasons to not provide parental information? The acceptable reasons for not providing parental information is if both parents are incarcerated, the student left the home due to an abusive family environment, or the student doesn't have any contact with the parents and has no clue where they are. Other than that, they have to provide parental information. Okay. Um, Unacceptable reasons: your parents don't want to provide their information. Unfortunately, that comes up, but that's not, the college will say, well, that's not acceptable. The parents refuse to contribute to your college expenses. That's not acceptable, in the sense that parents still have to provide information in the FAFSA for the student to be considered for all aid. It does not obligate a parent to pay for anything. Okay, just because a parent's filling out this form doesn't mean you have to pay anything, unless of course there's some type of divorce agreement where the parent agreed in court to pay for kids' education. But by filling out the FAFSA, merely filling out the FAFSA, a parent's not required to pay for anything. Your parents do not claim you to depend on their income taxes. That doesn't matter. Whether you claim a student on your taxes or not, does not matter for purposes of the FAFSA. So there's very limited scenarios in which a student does not have to provide parental information. Otherwise, it will be required. Okay. Now, whose parental information do you provide? First of all, let's talk about who is a parent. A parent for purposes of the FAFSA is a parent who's either a biological parent, an adoptive parent, or a step parent if remarried. Okay. So let's talk about remarried parents. What happens if the parents are separated or divorced? If the parents are divorced, then it's the student with whom the parent with whom the student has lived the longest in the last 12 months from the day at the time they fill out the FAFSA. Okay. Now, if the parents say they divorce, right? The student lives more with, let's say, parent one. Parent one now has a significant other. Okay. Student would still just do parent one's information. If parent one marries that significant other now becomes a step parent, the student has to report parent one and the significant other, the step parent, regardless of what the step parent wants to do. Okay. This is where I joke around with families. I tell them, I'm not giving you marital advice. I'm just telling you whose information to report. If people are separated but not divorced, as long as the marriage, for all intents and purposes, is over, you just had different domiciles, different lives, it doesn't matter if you're not legally divorced, okay, or legally separated. As long as it's over, it's the parent with whom you live the longest. If they say it's equal, 6 months with one, 6 months with the other, then it's the parent who provided the most financial support in the last 12 months. Okay, and hopefully you can figure out which parents to report. Okay, grandparents are not parents, uncles are not parents, aunts, godparents, neighbors, those legal guardians, those are not parents for purposes of the FAFSA. They should never enter their information on the FAFSA. Okay. Now, for the parents, if there's a number of different scenarios. Some parents are like, well, we're not married, but we're living together. There's a status says unmarried but living together. Okay. If both parents are in the household, if there's two-parent household, and both legal parents have to report their information on the FAFSA, it's going to ask for the status, and then it's going to ask for the month and year of when they were married or when they separated. For the parent information, if the parent does not have a social security number, they enter all zeros. Otherwise, enter your social security number. Then it's going to ask for the parent's last name and the parent's first initial, just the initial, okay, and the date of birth. Double check this, make sure it's correct, because if as a parent, if you created an FSA ID previously, if what you enter here, the date of birth or your social security number, doesn't match what you created in the FSA ID, you won't be able to use the FSA ID at the end to sign. Okay, so just keep this in mind. For the parents, if you have an ITIN, do not use an ITIN. Enter all zeros. ITIN is used for individuals with other taxes who do not have a social security number. That's only for taxes. Okay. You can enter an email address as a parent if you want to. If there are two parents in the household, you're going to be asked for the first parent, and it says on the top, enter information for your first parent, and then you get the same questions, but it'll say second parent. Okay, so you have parent one and parent two. If your parents lived in Illinois for at least 5 years, legal residents, parents legal residence refers to where is your permanent domicile. Really, that's it. Okay. And then you proceed through the questions. Once again, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years or a year, as long as you're living here in Illinois and that's your permanent residence, one of the parents, you're going to be fine. Okay. Now it's going to try to figure out what's the household size. All right. So remember, the student entered their information already. So you got one student in there, and the parent or parents. Okay. Now it's asking how many other dependent children do your parents have? Notice in the blue says, do not include yourself, the students. All right. So it's asking how many other siblings are in the household. All right. Then it says, how many other dependents do your parents have? This would be like, say, the grandma or grandparent is living in the home. They don't pay bills. They don't pay rent. The parents themselves are supporting that grandparent. That would be other dependents that your parents have. Okay. If the parents have another child that doesn't live with them, and they support them, or that individual is under 24, not married, basically they can't say yes to any dependency questions, you can actually claim that individual too. And this is all important because they're trying to figure out, okay, how big is the household size? Because when the household size is bigger, you have more expenses, which means you have less money to contribute to your child's education. Okay. So just read through those questions carefully, and then it's going to tell you, okay, here's the math. And your household size is 5. You, the student, your parents are 2, and then 2 other children. So that's 5 people. Then the next question says, number in college. Out of the 3 dependents in your household, how many will be in college between July 1st, 2023 and June 30, 2024? Do not include your parents, but do include yourself. All right. So parents, if you're in college, you do not include you in this answer. Okay. Just the students and any other children that you have that are in college. All right. Then we get to the tax filing section. All right. There's going to be some questions, for 2021. Now it's like, wait a minute, I'm filling out the form for the 23-24 year. Yes, but they asked for prior tax information. Okay. So for 2021, the vast majority of individuals have already completed their taxes, either back in April or recently, if they got an extension to file their tax return. All right. And they did that. They went a little bit further back just to make this process technically easier. Now, parents, if your income in 2021 was significantly higher than it is now, you still have to report 2021 information. However, you need to communicate that information to the college once the student is admitted, so they understand that the 2021 income is not reflective of your ability to pay for college now. They may ask for additional documentation. You're appealing your situation, so they can compose an award letter or financial aid offer that's more indicative of what the family can truly afford. But you always answer the information exact. You can't change things. If it says for 2021, you can't say, well, I'm going to put in 2022. No, you can't do that. Enter the information for the year for which they want it. Right now, there's certain thresholds that if an individual exceeds certain income threshold, they're required to file a tax return. Okay. So you need to enter that information. So for example, if you're married and the parents are 65 and your gross income is over 25,100, you would have to file a tax return. Okay. Now, if you say not going to file, say you made $100,000, you say, I don't believe in filing a tax return, so I'm not going to file it. There's going to be a data inconsistency. The college is going to say, okay, they said they're not going to file, but the income shows that they're lower. They're required to file. So the college they'll tell you either 1, you got to file if you want financial aid, or 2, you need to give us an IRS tax transcript. And the only way to get an IRS tax transcript is to file a tax return. If you don't do any of those 2, the student will be stuck in verification. And when you're stuck in verification, the student will not get any financial aid dispersed to them. All right. So the question says, what was your status to file a tax return? Either already completed, will file, or not going to file. In this case, for most parents, you've already completed your tax return. What's the type of tax reform? Most will do a 1040. Some individuals have a foreign tax return, or they I forget what the other ones are, but for most will do a 1040. Then it says, what is your filing status? How did you file? If there were 2 parents and they filed married jointly, that's one option. If you indicate married filing separately, you will not be able to use the next tool, which is the IRS data retrieval tool. Because what happens is when they pull the information from the IRS through the IRS data retrieval tool, which I'll get to in just a bit, they can only pull one person's tax information. Okay, so if you file 2 returns because you're filing separately, you can't use it because you can't pull both of them. If you file married jointly, there's only 1 return, so they'll be able to pull that full return. If you did a foreign tax return, well, the IRS doesn't have that foreign tax return, so they can't pull that. Okay, but if you meet certain criteria, you could be prompted to proceed to the IRS, and if you can, do it, please, because what happens then when you do the IRS retrieval tool, all the information that is asked on the FAFSA related to the tax return will be transferred over and into the FAFSA itself, so you can skip all those questions. And you know that you can skip them because it'll say in the section where you enter the answer, it'll say transfer from IRS. Okay, you just let it be, and you let it be, and you go to the next one. When you click transfer to the IRS, you get some pop-up boxes saying you're leaving the FAFSA, you're going to the IRS, this is a federal site, you'll say, okay, accept. You get to this where it asks you, whose parent information are you going to provide? Parent 1 or parent 2, you need the FAFSA ID. So if you haven't created an FAFSA ID here, this is where you create an FAFSA ID right there in that box that says FAFSA ID username. Right below it says forgot username, and then create an FAFSA ID. You click on create FAFSA ID, you create it, so that you can continue on. Okay. When you get a pop-up box that says get my federal income tax information, that looks the one on the left-hand side, double check it and make sure that matches exactly what's on the tax return. The filing status, the address, your name, make sure it matches exactly. You hit submit, and then hopefully you get a box that pops up that says federal income tax information. Then what I have circled is you click the box that says I agree that I'm going to want this information transferred to IRS. Then transfer now button will be will turn blue. You click transfer, and all the information will be transferred over. Okay. Now, sometimes people have issues with not working, saying we cannot find the information. Right? Double check the name, make sure it matches what's on the tax return. Okay, make sure the filing status matches. In some cases, I found when someone files married filing jointly, if the person listed second on the tax return is trying to retrieve the information, it may not work. So have the person who was listed first attempt to use the IRS data retrieval tool. Okay, and remember, you have to have an FAFSA to do this. If you do not, then you have to enter the information manually. All right. Now, if you had done the IRS data retrieval tool where it says 35,000, that would be grayed out, and it'll say transfer from IRS. Okay. So then you can just skip to the next question. But if you didn't use the tool, you'll have to enter the information. Now, the good thing about the FAFSA is it tells you exactly where to find the information. So, for example, it says this amount is found on IRS Form 1040, line 11. Is asking for adjusted gross income. All right. So you click on, you enter it exactly from IRS Form 1040, line 11. All right. And you hit continue. And then it says, okay, well, why is it asking me for income from work? Because I already entered my adjusted gross income. Well, remember, adjusted gross income includes many sources of income, not just money earned from work. And it could be dividends, it could be interest income, it could be business income, it could be a whole bunch of different things. All right. The next question, then the subsequent question says, how much did you earn from working? Parent 1 and parent 2. All right. And notice it says this amount is in your parent 1 portion of IRS Form 1040, line 1, plus Schedule 1, line 3, plus 6, plus box 14, code A of Schedule K1. You're like, hey, but what's a Schedule K1? Well, if you don't know what it is and it's not in your packet, you don't have one. So you can ignore that part. All right. For most parents, if say you have, standard, there's no such thing as a standard job, but say you just get a W-2, that's all you got, that's all the money you made from working, it's basically what's in box number 1. Okay. If there was one parent that was working, the other one wasn't working, whatever is in line 1 of the 1040 is what you will enter here for parent 1, and then for parent 2, you enter 0 because the other parent didn't work. But remember, parent 1 is all the income and wage, line 11, line 1 of the 1040 is all the income from both parents if both parents work. So that's why you may have to reference the box 1 of the W-2. Okay. And right next to in this case where I wrote 25,000, right to the right, there's a little question mark. You click on that and a pop-up box will come up to help you determine what is it that I need to report here. And this is just income earned from work. There's going to be a question about, did you file a Schedule 1? And this one gets a little tricky. A lot of people do a Schedule 1. So they would say, yes, I submitted a Schedule 1. But if you did a Schedule 1, but only to either list unemployment compensation, which is line 7 of the Schedule 1, the educator expenses, line 11, you did an IRA deduction, line 20, student loan interest deduction, line 21 of Schedule 1. If you only did the Schedule 1 for any of those reasons and only those reasons, then you can say no. Otherwise, you say yes. And if you're really confused, just click don't know. Okay, you're perfectly fine with that. As of today, are either of your parents a dislocated worker? A dislocated worker is an individual that lost their job. They got laid off, got terminated, or they were a homemaker who was displaced because the partner who was supporting them lost their job. You can say yes if you are a dislocated worker. Otherwise, say no. If you're a little confused, you can say don't know. Okay. Then there will be, the student may be prompted, not everybody will see this question, but they may be prompted. And the unique thing for this question is that it's asking for anybody in the household. That's the first little wrinkle. Anyone in the household of those 5 people that we listed earlier in the 2021 or 2022 years. So the last, basically in 2 years, that they qualify for any of these federal means programs. Our federal means tested programs, Medicaid, SSI, SNAP, which I believe are food stamps, free and reduced lunch program, TANF, WIC, any of those, okay? I tell families, you're not gonna lose your benefits. This is a way by which the form, basically a way to verify this family has need, okay? So the more you check, that's a good thing, all right? If none of these apply to you, you can say none of the above, okay? And then it's going to ask for additional information. Read this carefully because I noticed a lot of people enter the adjusted gross income once again, but this one says enter the amount of your parents' income tax. So taxes paid, all right? This total amount of, this is the total amount of IRS form 1040 line 22 minus Schedule 2 line 2. If you don't have a Schedule 2, consider that Schedule 2 to be 0. Then you just report what's on line 22. This is taxes paid, so that's money leaving the household. Okay, so you had your AGI, right? Say your AGI was, I don't know, $75,000. And say you paid $5,000 in taxes. So you wrote $75,000 for AGI. Now you wrote $5,000 for taxes paid. That means your available income really is $70,000. Okay, so it's a good thing to report income tax paid here. Okay, it tells you exactly where it's found. If you did the IRS data retrieval tool, this will already be populated for you. Okay. Now, these are things that are for parents. It's asking of parents, okay? And these are exclusions or untaxed income, combat pay or special combat pay, student college grant or scholarships report to the IRS your parents' income. Those are taxable items, okay? This is of the parent. So if the parent was in college and received a grant and it was taxable, you would write it here. The other one says education credits, American Opportunity Tax Credit or Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. These are credits that parents get at the back end. So say you have a child in college, you're paying for their expenses and you're paying for certain qualified educational expenses like tuition and fees. Those are usually the main ones. You can get up to $2,500 per student if you qualify for the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Typically, your modified adjusted gross income has to be under a little bit under 180,000 or less. So you can get up to $2,500 per student based on how much, depending on how much you paid out of pocket. Lifetime Learning Tax Credit, that's per return. It's a smaller amount, so they're slightly different, okay? But this is something that if you did get that credit, when you do your FAFSA, you do your child's FAFSA for the subsequent year, you want to report the credit because they want to even decrease that adjusted gross income even more because they want to make sure that credit doesn't penalize you. Okay. Now they do also ask for untaxed, income. So untaxed portions of IRA distributions or pension forms or pension funds. So remember, the AGI is all the taxable information. Okay, so now it's asking for stuff that's untaxed because once again, looking at the money coming into the household. So just go through those. For many people, it's all going to be zeros because they're not in the military. They're not in, the parents are not in the military. The parents aren't in college. The parents aren't retired. Or, so just read through those to make sure you report it correctly. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If in 2021, if you transferred jobs and had a rollover, okay, you roll over your 401k from your former employer to an IRA or another retirement vehicle, make sure that you exclude that from the untaxed portions of the IRA distributions. Otherwise, it's reported as an untaxed distribution, so it can inflate your expected family contribution. So just kind of be cognizant of that. And then it's asking for additional items. So this is the parent, any child support your parents paid because of divorce, separation, a result of a legal requirement. So that money that's they paid, so money leaving the household. If the parents were in the co-op program or the parents had work study, they want to exclude that information. Then they get to untaxed income. So this would be like child support received by the parents. Then they have some other things like, if you're members of the military or clergy. But there's another one. This is the more common one. It says payment to tax-deferred pension or retirement savings plans. And then you see it says on W-2 form boxes 12A through 12D, codes D, E, F, G, H, and S. So look at your W-2, look at box 12, and look for those specific codes. Many will have the DD, the double D code. Do not report the double D code here, okay? This would be like if you're doing like deferred compensation. They take out some money of your check pre-tax for your deferred comp. That would be one of these codes, and you would report that amount here, okay? And then at the bottom it says the untaxed income not reported, such as workers' compensation, disability benefits, etc. Okay, so this would be anything that's not in your AGI, such as those, you want to report it here. Okay. Now, you do want to include pre-tax contributions to health savings accounts, but not the value of an HSA. Okay, and we can talk about that if you have more questions. And then it gets to the assets. All right, and then parents. This is where a lot of parents get really worried. Once again, the number one driver is income. Okay, assets. When they look at the parental assets, they only look at 12% of the assets reported. Okay, so say you had $10,000 worth of assets. Okay, only $1,200 of that $10,000, 12%, if my math is correct. Yes, $1,200 will be used towards the EFC. Okay, they don't use the full amount. For the student assets, they look at 20% of the student assets. Okay, for the parents, it's only 12%. So the first one says, as of today, what is your parents' total current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts? All right. The next one says, what is the net worth of your parents' investments, including real estate? Not your parents' home. You exclude your primary residence. That's not considered an asset for purposes of the FAFSA. You also exclude the value of your 401k, your IRA, or your pension plan. Do not report the value of those plans. Those are retirement plans for you. So exclude the home in which you live, exclude the value of retirement plans. And if you have a family business and the majority is owned by a family, you own more than 50% of the business, and you have 100 full-time employees or fewer, you exclude that. Okay, those are not considered assets. But like things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those are considered trust funds. Those are considered assets. Okay. And for businesses, you only report them if you have more than 100 full-time employees. If you live on a farm, and operate that farm, it's not considered an asset. Okay. It's not considered an investment farm, but you have to live on it. Okay. If you don't live on it, then that's a different story. All right. So we got to the parent section. Now we're jumping to the student section. All right. That's why it says on the top, student tax filing status. It says for 2021, have you completed your IRS tax return? I've seen students who do this fast, like, oh, yeah, of course I did. My parents did it. They forget they're asking the student, not the parents. This is of the student. All right. So make sure they enter their information. Most will say not going to file because either they didn't make enough in 2021 to, require them filing, or they chose not to file because it was minimal. or they didn't work at all. So they would say not going to file. If they did file, they would say already completed. They ask the type of form. And once again, they may be prompted to use the IRS data retrieval tool if they so qualified. Otherwise, they would say no, not going to file. It's still going to ask them, oh, once again, the IRS data retrieval tool is going to ask for the FSA ID of the student to get to that section. Um, if they don't use the tool, but they did file a tax return, they will have to report the adjusted gross income. If they didn't, if they said not going to file, it would jump straight to the questions that said student income from work. Okay, so if they did work, they would report it here. If they didn't work, they would just enter 0. And this would be if they filed a tax return, they would indicate how much they paid in taxes. Oftentimes it's 0. If a student said not going to file, this question will not even be seen by them. All right. And then once again, it's going to ask questions of the student. Did you get combat pay or special combat pay? Were there any of your college grant scholarships reported to the IRS as taxable income? A lot of the questions were repeated. For many students, it's going to be 0, especially if you're in high school, because they don't apply to you. All right. This asking for the student once again. Child support you paid, the student. All right. Earnings from cooperative education programs, earnings from federal work study. Now, if a student did say they had a summer job, say they worked, I don't know, McDonald's, they made $6,000 over the summer. They really worked a lot of hours. And they also had a work study job on campus in their first year. So they had $8,000, $6,000 from McDonald's, $2,000 from work study. So they ended up filing a tax return. They had an adjusted gross income. Let's make it simple, $8,000. Then here they report that $2,000 of the taxable income was from work study. So the FAFSA is going to take that $8,000 of adjusted gross income and decrease it by $2,000 and only look at $6,000 because work study is considered financial aid. And this would be probably for in future FAFSAs because student actually has to have worked in a work study job on campus. So it wouldn't be now because they're still in high school. But the FAFSA takes these things into account when they determine what is the ability of the student to pay for college. Then they go through a lot of the same stuff that you saw on the parent side, payments to tax deferred pension plans and so forth. They will mostly be all 0, except maybe for the last question that I have with a yellow arrow there. It says money received or paid on your behalf, for example, bills, not reported elsewhere on this form. This includes money that you receive from a parent or other person whose financial information is not reported on this form, is not part of a legal child support agreement. All right. This is where the 529 plans may come into play. All right. Remember when I talked about parents and only parents report information on the FAFSA? Okay. I have a niece. Okay, I like my niece. I got a 529 plan for my niece. Okay. When she's ready to go to college, she's a senior in high school, right? Hypothetically, she's still young. She fills out her FAFSA. She would not report the value of the 529 plan that I have for her because I am not a parent. I am the uncle. Okay. When she starts college and then I give her a distribution, she will report the amount that I gave her right here, okay? Because I gave her money or paid bills on her behalf. This would be when grandparents and other people that have 529 plans for your child make a distribution, not the value of the plan, but the distribution. And the reason they do it that way is because as the owner of the plan, I can transfer it to whomever I wish, change beneficiaries to whomever I wish within certain parameters, but they're pretty generous. All right. So that's why my niece wouldn't report the value of the plan that I have for her. Now, conversely, if my son is a senior in high school and he was filling out the FAFSA now, I would have to report the 529 plan that I have for my niece and the plan that I have for my son as parental assets because I am the owner of both plans. If I had 3 kids, and I plan for each kid, I would have to report the value of all 3 plans as a parental asset because I can change beneficiaries, okay? But here, this question, it's only for distributions if the distribution came from a parent from someone who is not a parent and whose information is not being reported on the FAFSA itself. And I can answer those questions at the end if you have more questions about that. They're going to ask for student assets. As of today, what are the student assets and balance of cash, savings, and checking account of the student? What is the worth of their investments of the student? And if the student has a business, they would report the value of the business, okay? If the student has a NUGMA or UTMA, that's a student asset, Okay, it would be reported there under net worth of your investments, even though they may not be able to get it, after until they reach the age of adulthood in Illinois. If the student has a trust fund that they will get, but they won't get it until say they're 30, but it's their trust fund, they would have to report the value of the trust fund here. The exception to trust funds would be if it's a court-ordered trust, in the sense that, say somebody gets into a car accident, there's a settlement specifically to pay for the medical expenses of that individual. So the court has said this is what the money's earmarked for. You wouldn't report that trust fund, but everything else would be reported. Okay. When you get to the end, if there's any errors, you may get this message that says the following errors occurred. In this case, the parents enter zeros for social security number because they didn't have one. The FAFSA is basically saying, are you sure this is correct? If it's correct, you just click check for errors because it's fine. If someone entered maybe the same number for adjusted gross income and taxes paid, it'll come up here and they're like, oh goodness, I made a mistake, and they would correct it. Otherwise, you just click check for errors. All right. Prior to submitting, you're going to get a summary of all the information in their collapsible section. So you click on that drop-down box that I have circled on the right, and that section will open up. So student demographics will pop up. Okay. I like to just scroll through this, quick, relatively fast, but scroll through it just to see if something catches my eye that looks wrong. Okay. And then you can click on that question to go back exactly to that section. You can even print this page if you so desire, but this is a good way to kind of review the whole section. All right. Once you do that, and actually before that, there's going to be some questions of the student that's asked about I think I have the slides out of order. They're going to ask about the demographics. What is your gender? What is your ethnicity? They're technically optionals. They're optional because you can say, I do not want to answer. I decline to answer. They're testing them out for subsequent years. Okay. But once you get through that, you're going to get to the signature. Okay. A student must sign, and also a parent must sign. Okay. The parent must, and it can be either parent, doesn't have to be both. Okay. If the parent has an FSID, they could sign, electronically. Oh, and here are the questions. You know what? I'll fix this. I'll send a PDF of this presentation to Wendy so she can share it with you folks, and I'll fix the order. But these are the demographic questions that I mentioned earlier, that we can say I decline to answer. These do not affect students' eligibility for financial aid. They're just doing a test run to see how they're going to work for future usage. For the parent signature, once you indicate the parent, in this case, on the left-hand side, you get a box basically saying, everything I provided here is true to the best of my knowledge. And I agreed that, I agreed to all the terms, basically saying, as a parent, you're going to use any financial aid for purposes of going to college. You hit continue. It gets you to the section where you enter your FSA ID. If you haven't yet created an FSA, you can actually create one right here and then. Otherwise, you enter it and you sign the FAFSA form, and it should be fine. Now, if you don't have an FSA ID, there are other options to sign the form itself. You can print a signature page, or you can submit without parent signatures. Okay. The only time the student would submit it without parent signatures is if, say, the parent, is in the process of getting an FSAD, or they have some difficulties with the FSAD and they want to rectify those, get their FSAD to sign it. Otherwise, you click print signature page, but be mindful that if you print a signature page, they'll ask for a wet signature, and then you mail it off through the US mail. They say it could take up to 2 weeks to get the signature page matched up with the FAFSA, but I've seen it take up 4 to 8 weeks. Okay. So try to use the FSAD to sign it. If you have to do a parent signature page, sometimes the colleges are willing to take it on behalf of the students. So just check with the college that your student may be interested in attending. With the student signature, they also have to agree, that they're going to use this for purposes of the college, and then they provide their student signature, and then they submit it, and the information that's submitted will be emailed to the students. In this case, the student email that was provided, a summary of the information will be sent to them via link, and then on the confirmation page, this is the top portion. I couldn't fit the whole page on here. You get an estimated expected family contribution. Okay. Now, in this case, I was using the test site, so it defaults to 9999999. If this was an actual real EFC, this person, what this saying is that this family can afford to pay almost $1 million towards a child's education. In most, obviously, in most cases, it's going to be significantly lower. If it says zero EFC, for example, if it's all zeros, that means the student qualified for the maximum Pell Grant for this upcoming year. For this current year is $6,895 per year. If they attended a college in Illinois that's MAP approved, they would qualify for the MAP grant, which is currently $7,200. So between the MAP and Pell, for someone who gets an EFC of zero, they'll get over $14,000 in grant aid. And that's for the people that have the most need. As your need decreases, that EFC goes up higher, which means this EFC numbers goes up higher, which means the grants would either decrease or you wouldn't be offered grants. You may be offered student loans. Student may be offered work study. In some cases, the parent may be offered a Parent Plus loan. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a data release number. Just be mindful of that, because sometimes the colleges can use that to pull students FAFSA if they need to, especially if the student has a common name. The overall process, and we're almost done here, and I'll get to the questions. The overall process, starting the green section, file a FAFSA alternative application. You do this annually. Complete the verification process if selected. For example, if you said I'm in legal guardianship, they're going to ask for documentation of that. If you manually entered all the income information, the college will likely ask for an IRS tax transcript or copies of W-2s to verify that the income you reported or manually entered is actually correct, because they want to ensure that the aid goes to those that have need. Then the student will get those financial aid offers. They review them, make a decision, and they respond to the colleges. Now, if you get a financial aid offer from a college and you're like, there's no way in the world I can afford this, what can I do? Well, talk to the college. If you have unique situations, that the income in 2022 is significantly lower, or you recently learned that you're getting laid off or your hours are going to get cut, you communicate that with the college to let them know, so they know that the 2021 information reported is not indicative of your future earnings or your current earnings. All right. If you're going to a private college, the private colleges do tuition discounting all the time. Talk to them and say, hey, we're really close here, but can you help us out a little bit more? Come up with some realistic number, a few $1,000s. Don't go in there saying, can you drop it $50,000? They're going to laugh at you, right? You come in and say, can you do 3 or 4 or 5,000, something reasonable? They're more than willing to usually come down and help you say yes to their institution. Okay. Approach it not adversarial, approach it as if you're on the same side of the table. Okay. What can we do together to get my child to your college? Okay. And then you complete any pending processes such as housing, if you're going to live in residence halls, sign up for placement testing, sign up for summer orientation, meet an academic advisor, things like that. If you ever do have questions, you can always text us your questions. We're a state agency. This is a free initiative. Student would just text their name to any of these numbers, whatever is closest to them. This goes to a real person, and we verify, what year they're in high school, or if they're in college. If they're in high school, what high school they attend. We also even ask them if they're first generation college student. If they say yes to that, then we provide some additional check-ins with them over the summer to make sure everything's on track for them to continue in the fall. But we'll send some reminders. October 1st, we'll tell them, hey, the FAFSA is open, the alternative application is open, get it done. If for some reason we're going to run out of state money, we'll say, hey, get your FAFSA done, because we're going to run out of state money by Friday. Make sure it's submitted. But more importantly, if they have questions, they can text us their questions, and then we'll respond. And as I mentioned, we have the FAFSA information in-house, so oftentimes we can pull it up if needed to get them there, get them the answer they need. Because ultimately, we're here to help you, whether it's us, whether it's the college. Communication is key. Explain your situation is important, especially as college expenses get significantly higher. Okay, we want you to get to the next level. We want your students to succeed. Obviously, they're very bright. That's why they're at IMSA. They're very capable. Now let's get that financial piece of the pie put together so we can get them to the next level. All right, great. Let me exit out of this. Let me see, stop sharing, because I think there was some, 19 in the chat. Okay. Let's see. All right. So business assets. I'm going to start from the bottom, work my way up. Okay. And then Wendy, chime in if I miss anything. Okay. So if you have a business, if you're self-employed, you have a business, and if you have it's family owned, which it's you and the extended family, it could be aunts, uncles, in-laws, grandparents, cousins, and you have 100 full-time employees, none of it gets reported. None of your business assets get reported. Okay, it's only if you have an investment business, which means that you don't own, it's not family owned, then you report the assets. Otherwise, don't report it. Okay, with 529 plans, okay, you as the parent only report the plans for which you are the owner, okay, as a parental asset. So this is where I tell families, hey, you got grandma and grandpa with some cash laying around, have them open the plan, because grandma and grandpa are not parents for purpose of the FAFSA. They wouldn't report the value of the plan. They would only report, the student would only report the distributions. All right, let's go back to the example of my niece. All right, say my niece, say she started college this fall 2022. Okay, say I gave her $2,000 for, I don't know, for books. All right, oh, that they're very expensive books. She's in engineering. Those are expensive books. All right, say I gave her $2,000. Right, when she does her FAFSA for the 23-24 year, it's going to ask her for any money given to her in 2021. Well, I didn't give her anything in 2021. I gave her in 2022. When she does the FAFSA for the 24-25 year, which would be her junior year, she's going to report those $2,000 that I gave her in the fall of 2022. Okay. If I don't give her any money in the fall of 22 and I give her, say, $5,000 in spring of 2023, she wouldn't report that until she does the FAFSA for the 25-26 year, which would be the year that she's a senior in college. So hopefully you follow me with that type of time frame here. All right. All right. Let's see here. I created a FAFSA ID in my name, and the taxes are filed as married filing jointly in my husband's name. Technically, you should be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool if you're listed on the tax return. If it doesn't work, for whatever reason, you have two options. Either have the other parent, the spouse, create an FSAD and try to do that, or otherwise enter it just manually. Okay. All right. Trust. If the assets are under trust and the student is one of the beneficiaries, does that get reported as parental asset or student asset? Okay. So the question is, who is the trustee? Who's the owner of the trust? That's the key thing. Who's the owner of the trust? If the parent's the owner of the trust, then the assets are reported as parental assets. Okay. But remember, don't report your primary residence. Primary residence is not an asset. Okay. If the students, typically the only time, not the only time, the most common time with a student is the owner of a trust is if one of the parents actually passes and a trust has been created. And now the student as the beneficiary is also, the owner of the trust. Okay. So what happens? So the question is about assets. Oh shoot! I lost my thing. Reporting on funds for younger children change the asset picture. Let me explain two different ways. If say you got two kids, all right, the one's a senior, the other one's like a ninth grader. Okay, whatever assets the ninth grader has, that's not reported on the FAFSA because that's not the student going to college. Okay, only the assets of the senior will be reported. Okay, and the assets for which the parents are the owners. Okay, so say the parent is a joint owner with the ninth grader, a savings account of $1,000. The parents will only report half of it because half of it belongs to the ninth grader, half of it belongs to the parent. Okay, but remember, when they look at the assets, only 12% of the total assets are used to calculate the EFC. Okay, from the parent's part. All right, the income is the biggest driver of the EFC. All right. I did a 401k rollover in 2021 tax year, so is it best to fill my IRS 10 form manually? I would say yes. If you do transfer from the IRS, you should still be able to edit it. Just make sure you edit it before you submit it, because otherwise you usually have to go through the college office to make that change, and you have to provide documentation that you rolled it within because I believe you got a 60-day window to do it. Otherwise, it doesn't count as a rollover. It counts as a distribution of your 401k. Okay, I as a parent have a educational IRA and a 529 Bright Start plan for my dependent daughter, and I am custodian. Can I report both assets as parental assets? Well, with the Bright Start plan, technically you're not a custodian, you're an owner. You're either an owner or beneficiary. Sometimes you get a contingency. You're a contingent owner. That's in case the owner dies. So those typically are always parental assets. And then if you're the owner of those plans, you report them for all kids, even for the kids that are not in college. How long do we have to wait to delete a college and add a few more colleges to get the process so that all additional colleges get the information? If you do everything electronically, it takes about 2 to 3 business days for the FAFSA to get processed. So then you can make changes to the you can add the other additional colleges. All right, I think I may have caught up. So for the 529 plan, you enter the balance at the time you fill out the FAFSA. Okay, so the market's going down. I know my kid's 529 plan has decreased in value. So if I was filling out the FAFSA now, it would be less than if I filled it out a year ago. Okay, now some people say, well, Abel, I filled out my FAFSA, October 1st, the market's got significantly down. Can I go back and change my assets now? No, you cannot. You can make edits, you can make corrections. If you entered something in error, you can correct that at any time, but you cannot change assets because you spent some of the money. Okay, you can change assets, for example, make edits, corrections to the assets. If, for example, you reported the value of 401k, you go back and you say, why I taken that asset number out, because that's a correction. You're not just saying, well, my assets decrease. Okay. Did I miss anything, Wendy?
There are other questions up here above the educational IRA and 529 Bright Star question. So one is, I have another child in college for a master's degree. Does that mean I have 2 children in college?
No, because the child who's pursuing a master's degree is considered independent. Because remember, you have to be 24 years of age to be independent for pursuit of the FAFSA. You have to be 24 years of age, married, a veteran. One of the other parts would be if you're pursuing a graduate degree. And I'm pulling my FAFSA form real quickly so I can read the household section. Let's see here. Well, actually, let me qualify that. The question is, are you providing more than half of the support between July 1st, 2023 and June 30, 2023? Okay. So that's the key thing. Are you providing all their support? If you can say yes to that, you should be able to include them. Okay. If they don't live with you, they're living their own separate lives. If they can't say yes to any of those questions, then they can also include them. Okay. So for the master's degree, as long as you're providing more than half of their support financially, paying their rent, their bills, things like that, you should be able to include them. Okay.
I'm not, forgive me if you've answered this. Is it true you have to fill out the FAFSA as soon as possible? What happens if we fill it out late?
You don't get extra money if you do it October 1st versus say November 1st. Okay, so that doesn't affect the amount that you get. Some colleges may say, we want you to submit your FAFSA by December 15th or something, or January 1st to be considered for their institutional aid. Okay, so you won't lose any federal or state aid, but you may miss out on institutional aid. The other thing too is that the colleges will not be able to give you a financial aid offer and include need-based aid if they don't have your FAFSA information on hand. When your college gets the information, just about all of them would just hold it until the student has actually been admitted. Once they're admitted, then they pull the FAFSA information to compose that financial aid offer. Okay, so that's the long answer. Say there's no penalty, but you really want to check with the college's office to see what kind of deadline they may have. The FSA is the same every year. That does not change. You may have to change the password, but it does not change. The one thing you have to do every year is do a new FAFSA every year. But the FSA is your electronic signature. Okay. For the CSS profile, remember the CSS profile is used by certain colleges, not all of them, but certain colleges. In Illinois, I think there's only like 6 they use the CSS profile. Northwestern, University of Chicago, I think Lake Forest, Illinois West, I think Illinois Wesleyan. But they're almost always private colleges, and they use the CSS profile just for institutional aid, not for federal or for state aid, just institutional aid. They're trying to determine who is more upper middle income versus solidly middle income. For the CSS profile, they're asked questions that are not asked of the FAFSA. The CSS profile, specifically CSS profile, will ask for the equity in your home. CSS profile will ask what is the value of your retirement plan. Okay, they look at those other factors because they may give more money to a family that makes $150,000 versus the family that makes $650,000. Okay, in both cases, those families are not getting any free federal or state aid, but institution aid could be a different animal altogether. Because you look at University of Chicago, gosh, I think their tuition is north of 70,000 in tuition alone. Northwestern's, the 60, 70,000 range in tuition alone also. So we're talking pretty high expenses. Check with the college to see if they require one. Be aware that the colleges do require a CSS profile. Many of them may require the non-custodial parents to fill out a CSS profile if the parents are divorced or separated. All right, so it gets a little trickier with that. For a real estate investment, okay. So I got a home, right? Say I buy a second property. That's considered an asset because that's not my primary residence. You look at the value of the home, subtract the debt, and that's your net worth. That's what you report as an asset. Now, what's the value of the home? There's different ways by which you can do that. You can see what similar homes are going for in your area. You can see, what maybe the insurance company values your home to be. It doesn't have to be exact, but you have to be in the ballpark. Now, if you're a real estate agent, for example, or say your livelihood is of rental properties and you have an LLC, okay, you have business, and all those rental properties are part of the business. Remember, any family-owned business where you have 100 full-time employees or less is not reported in the FAFSA. In that case, that investment property, which is your business, is not reported as an asset. Okay, that's the one exception. Hopefully, I didn't confuse you too much with that.
Okay, well, there are some questions that were in towards the beginning that I think anticipated some of your talk, but a couple of people asked about adding more than 10 schools.
Yeah, so once again, if you had more than 10, you got to get the FAFSA process, then come back, take whatever number of schools out to be able to fit in the remaining schools, and then resubmit it. And then once again, it should take 2 to 3 business days. Everything's done electronically. What if you own real estate but rent your primary residence? Do you still report it as an asset? Yes. That's no longer your primary residence if you rent it. Wherever you live is your primary residence. Okay. At the time you fill out the FAFSA. Otherwise, that's actually an investment property now. All right. Is it okay to not fill the FAFSA form if financially is not expected? The state says you need to fill it out to graduate from high school, but you can also fill out the non-participation form. I think you should fill out. Let me tell you why. The unsubsidized direct loans, which are federal loans, are not need-based. Everybody who fills out the FAFSA will qualify for those, and that could be up to $5,500 for the first year, $6,500 for the second year, $7,500 for third year and beyond. All right. The reason I mentioned federal loans is because if the student graduates and has difficulty paying the student loans back, they can get into an income-driven payment program. Currently, what's being presented by the current administration about the student loan debt relief program, they have to be federally held loans. So federal loans. So they can, if you qualify, it'd be $10,000 automatically if you have them. If $20,000 if you had a Pell Grant, were given a Pell Grant in undergrad. So there's loan forgiveness, this income-driven repayment program. So you qualify for that. For the work study program, I've seen some pretty high incomes, reported in the FAFSA where the student was offered a work study position. The colleges may say, we want you to fill out the FAFSA before we dig into our own pockets. If you don't do the FAFSA, which is fine too, if you don't do it, you're basically telling the college, I'm just going to write a check for the full cost of attendance. Okay. If you can do that and you're okay with it, that's not a problem. So it takes about 45 minutes the first time. After that, it takes maybe 20 to 30 minutes to do it every subsequent year. So short answer is yes, it's okay to fill out the FAFSA, but you're just going to write a check for the full cost. And the college is not redeeming anything.
I just want to pop in there. I've heard two universities that if you don't fill it out when the student is a freshman, and then some sort of tragedy happens and the family has no money, or a job is lost, or there's a flood, you're not eligible to just suddenly pop in as a junior and expect aid. So
they will get federal and state aid if they qualify for it, but they may not get any institutional aid.
Right,
institutional
that's
aid,
what I mean
from
from the college. So
yeah,
that's been a recommendation.
And so right now, the FAFSA that's open right now, the 23-24 FAFSA, which is for the upcoming year, that's going to stay open all the way through the summer of 2024. Stays open for 21 months. Okay. And that's why you still see the 22-23 FAFSA. Okay. But by then, the institutional aid is going to run out. Okay. All right. The whole rental property question, I think I need to get more specific. That's a very specific question. If someone owns, let me give you another scenario. If you own an apartment building, there's 10 units, you live in one of the units, 9/10 of the building would be considered an asset. Okay, then you have to take the value, so subtract the debt, and then 9/10 of the equity will be reported as an asset. The exception to that would be if you're renting to family members. Okay, if it's rent to family members, you exclude them from the equation. Okay. Yeah, in this case, if you own other real estate, if you live in a house and you're renting, say, the top floor to your family member, and you have a second house, the second house is an asset. If you live in Chicago, you have a 2-flat and you're renting the top floor to a non-family member, you actually have to report a portion of the equity in that house as an asset because you're renting to a non-family member. In essence, you have like a mini apartment building. All right. I'll drop my contact information in the chat in case the person has questions about the real estate. You want to talk about that offline, or anyone else, you can email me your questions too if
that's
you prefer.
That's wonderful, Abel. And you're going to send me the PowerPoint? Yes.
Yes, I just gotta change the order of one of the slides that I put out of order. So I'll make a PDF of it and email it to you probably tomorrow after I make a few minor edits to it.
Great.
So you can have and share with the family.
I have the recording. So when I have those two things together, I will send this out again to the parents. So they'll be able to get that. And then there was the slide that you showed that had the numbers that students, parents can text.
Oh, yes.
For more information. So there's that avenue as well.
Correct.
Abel, I just want to say on behalf of everybody here how much we at IMSA appreciate you taking your evening, not a small part of your evening, but a rather substantial chunk, to give us really super detailed information. This is fantastic. And the work you do in access for students to higher education, it's changing lives. So we appreciate that very, very much.
Well, I'm glad to be here with you folks, and I'm glad I'll give you some insight and hopefully answer a lot of your questions. But please, if you do have questions, email me and we can get down to the details. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Great.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.